Franco,
Yeah.
firstly, I would like to tell the audience a bit about your relationship with poetry, as far as I could know. Firstly, I want to start from here. Your book, The Uprising on Poetry and Finance, was published in 2012, right? 7 years after that, in 2019, Breathing, Kaos and Poetry followed the book. The letter was published by Yort Books in Turkish, with my translation.
Thank you.
The uprising, we can say that the uprising was a genealogical diagnosis. Breathing is an essay on poetical therapy, we can say maybe. And also in Soul at Work, you say, for instance, poetic and conceptual creativity, like political creativity, are the ways of charismatic creation. The construction of breaths over the absence of meaning. You also wrote many essays on poetry and finance. Poetry has an important place in your political practice. For instance, Radio Alice, you have read, I think, lots of poems in there. You worked and still collaborate with some musicians. Recently, a video with the title Bronk Nina Nana, right? Right spelling? Bronk Nina Nana.
Bronk Nina Nana.
Nana.
Yes. Nina Nana means lullaby.
Lullaby.
Yeah.
Okay. This was online. You wrote its lyrics, I suppose.
Yeah, I did.
That was great also. You have never lost your interest in poetry as far as I know. What would you like to say all about this? I mean, maybe there is something you want to add. Maybe I don't know everything. I want everything about that.
Now, what you know is enough. Actually, you quoted these two books that I wrote in 2011, the year of Occupy Wall Street, and the second, Breathing, Chaos and Poetry. Poetry and Finance, Chaos and Poetry. Poetry and finance are two concepts, two words that have nothing to do, two different words. But I see that there is something in common, and that what is in common is language, of course, language. So I noticed that during the 20th century, in the last century, finance married with technology has become a sort of master of human language. Human language has lost its autonomy, has lost its autonomous life, because it is more and more penetrated and automated by the force of technology and by the force of finance. So The Uprising, that book about poetry and finance, is an essay in understanding what has happened in human language during the past century. Then, in Poetry and Chaos, I try to understand the current situation nowadays, the storm of madness, aggressiveness, fear that is ravaging the world, is destroying the world, and chaos. Chaos is when the the force of the flows of information making possible to maintain a space of autonomy. And I think that the situation of the world in the pandemic age, it is clear that we are unable to master the flows of the linguistic virus. You remember that William Burroughs, the American writer William Burroughs, spoke of language as a virus that invaded the human organism and obliges us to be in a process of growing automation of language. I try to escape this trap of the automated language, the trap of the cognitive automaton. And I see poetry as a possible way of escape. What is poetry? I could not answer this question. I don't know what poetry is. And I also think that poetry is a human activity which escapes to any definition. And this ability of poetry of escaping is the only force of transformation that I see in this moment. Beware. I don't think that poetry will save the world.
Yes.
I think that the world has to save itself if we are able to save ourselves, and I am not sure of that. But poetry is the only way to escape to the language of power, to the language of the automaton.
Automatic, yes. And so, you have said, in fact, lots of things about that. I mean, in pandemic times, for example, I was going to ask you about a question about in pandemic times, but you have said, you have already said something. But I would like to know that how can we think of a process of singularity and language in pandemic times?
Actually, you know, we don't know what is happening. Nobody knows what is happening at the present. Scientists know a lot about biology, about the micro particles that we call virus. And politicians know something sometimes about the management of the economy and of daily life. Economists, they know a lot about abstract rules of the daily business of life. But at the end, nobody knows what's going to happen to the human mind. That is the point. The point is that we are on a threshold, a passage from light to darkness, or maybe a passage from darkness to light. Mm-hmm. That depends on us. So I say we don't know what's going to happen, but we already know many things. We know that 40 million people are unemployed in the United States. We know that unemployment is going to increase everywhere in the world. We know that the geopolitical map is jeopardized. We know, most of all, that the human subjectivity is traversed by a wave of fear, a wave of suicide, a wave of depression. This is,
I agree.
This is the key point. What's happening to the unconscious, to the global unconscious, what's happening to our ability to imagination. What can we imagine in a situation in which it's forbidden to approach my body to your body, my lips to your lips? What's going to happen to the human unconscious in a beyond this threshold?
Yes.
We don't know. And you know, it's a task of poetry to explore the possible direction of the present madness.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you. Maybe then I will ask that. Two questions in Uprising. Two quotes in Uprising attract my particular attention. You have quoted Flaubert and Derrida about form. Flaubert says we have too many things and not enough forms. Derrida says form fascinates when one no longer has the force to understand force from within itself. This is not an Aristotelian form, not teleological, and also how do you define form in poetry and aesthetics? It's so important question according to poetry, I think, form question. They generally say me, Nalan, you should be careful, use form in your poems. They say to me. They say, be careful, you should use some forms in your poems, they say. Some critics, they say to me. I can't still maybe understand to this totally. I can't understand totally.
What is the meaning of the word
yes.
form?
Yes, in poetry, maybe in politics too.
Well, let's try to understand what form means in general. Huh? And you see that there are many ways to use the word form. Huh? I suppose also in the Turkish language that unluckily I do not know. I think that you say form in different ways. You can say form has very much to do with perception of the world, imagination of the world. So I can perceive something because I can identify or assimilate that something, a bottle, a pen, a box of things, something, my face, your face, I can recognize because I have a formal perception in my mind, and I can imagine new forms because my mind is able to change. We call it morphogenesis, the creation of new forms. The problem is that the word form means also something different. For instance, the German language uses the word Gestalt. Gestalt is a form that we receive in a way that we cannot escape. It's like a cage, it's like a prison, it's like a building that encapsulates our imagination. That kind of gestalt, of form generating more forms according to an order. This is what is trapping our mind and also our life, our social life. We are unable to think to the world without the form of money. Money is a gestalt that we are obliged to imply when we relate the one to the other. Is money a natural thing? No, it is not. Is money an eternal form? No, it is not. It's a cage. It's a gestalt that the social practice has imposed on the transformation of life. So you see, form is an abstract but very strong and concrete at the end thing that not really a thing. The form is not a thing, but is the condition of accessing things. Is the condition, the mental condition of accessing the world. Yeah. This is why poetry is all about the creative morphogenesis, a creative formation of forms outside of the established gestalt.
Okay, I see now. Thank you, Franco. One of your interview, in your interview in the White Review Journal, you have something said so striking. I mean, you say many things in Guattari and Deleuze's philosophy seemed to me very interesting as a production of concepts for the explanation of what has already happened. For example, they perfectly explain the neoliberal proliferation, but after 40 years on, now you say Baudrillard is more important than Deleuze and Guattari. What makes you think that? Why Baudrillard is much more useful? You still think that? I don't know. Maybe you want to say something about it. In art, especially in art, yani art.
You know, I suppose that our listeners know that Deleuze and Guattari have been enormously important in the conceptual, philosophical, and practical transformation that we have been going through in the 70s, in the 80s. They have established or discovered, as you like, that desire is the crucial force in the social process. Desire. And actually, desire has a tension a creation, a creative tension towards the other, towards the future. Desire is the crucial force of transformation. The problem is that desire has been colonized by financial capitalism in the 80s, in the 90s. This is not a critique to Deleuze and Guattari. On the contrary, they have been able to show what is the field of transformation of social activity, together with Michel Foucault, who wrote a book titled Naissance de la biopolitique, the birth of biopolitics, which is extremely important to understand neoliberalism, the creation of the neoliberal subjectivity. The neoliberal subjectivity happens in the field of desire. So that one point. On the other side, I don't see an opposition. I don't see an opposition between Deleuze, Guattari, Foucault, and Jean Baudrillard. It's not an opposition. I see a complementarity, because Baudrillard was the first to understand that desire and seduction and simulation is the force that can liberate human energies, but also can submit human activity. Think to advertising, of course. Advertising has been the media which has played a central role in submitting human imagination and human desire to the force of the marchandise, of money, and of capital. So when we think of art, when we think of poetry, we see that art is taken in this double possibility. It is a force of desire, but at the same time is continuously taken, it continues captured by the forces of the market, by the forces of finance and of automated language of capitalism.
Yes, yes. Also, once you have said that irony, you have talked about irony and cynicism. I want to know that, what do you think about irony? I mean, if you use, in my opinion, if you use irony much, it makes us cynic person, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Obviously, it depends on what you mean by irony. It's a difficult word to define, like form, and possibly more, because, you know, irony is exactly the understanding that every definition, every meaning that you attribute to reality is empty, is fake. Whatever you say is not true. Whatever you say is not the real thing. Reality exceeds our language. So sometimes we decide with force, with the force of power, we decide that this word means this thing, and reality has to be translated in language with those words. So if you think to money, money is the system of general translation of things into science, into a semantic object, money. Irony is the consciousness and the practice based on the consciousness that no word is real, that whatever you say is not capturing the whole of reality. So there is something in excess of reality that language is unable to grasp. Irony is this consciousness, is the consciousness that there is something that we do not know, that we are unable to say. So every word, every enunciation, every gesture is asserting something, but if you are an ironic person, when you assert something, you have to say also, this is not the truth. This is my provisional way of speaking the truth, but truth is always escaping. Truth is always beyond our language, our words. This is the meaning of irony, in my opinion. Cynicism is different, because cynicism, the cynical person knows that there is no truth. He is playing with words in an ironic way, if you want, but he strongly believes that there is a force that is mastering everything. That force is power. The cynical person say yes to reality, say yes to the imposition of the present reality. The ironic person is escaping it.
Yes. By the way, I totally forgot to read something about form. I mean, in one of your poems, you have written about form, end of prophecy, the end of prophecy in one of your poems. You say, at the beginning, there was a matter. Shall I read? At the beginning, there was matter, magma, chaos, infinite possibilities without form. Then language turned matter into form and turned chaos into a world of order. The provisional ordering of meaning and the transformation of magma into cosmos, you say. Just wanted to recall this one from your poem. Also, you write. Do you still write some poems, Franco?
Time when not every day.
Yes.
Sometime.
Yes, you have shared some poems in English and Spanish. Again, I'm so thankful for that. Also, I want to say that I'm happy to announce that we are going to publish your some of poems in Kafa Göz Şiir Sanat magazine. In our magazine, we will publish them. Maybe we should emphasize this. You say that you are not a systematic poet. You say also you are not a literary critics. You say. Yes, you say you are systematic in some files of life, but not in poetry. When you, maybe now you want to say, when do you write in which times you write poems? You say, okay, yes, please.
You know, I've been writing poems for my life long, but I have lost most of my poems. I remember a Russian poet whose name is Velimir Chlebnikov. Chlebnikov, the inventor of the word Zaum, the transmental language of Russian Budetliane, of Russian futurism. Chlebnikov was accustomed to write on little pieces of paper. And he put all his poems into a sort of pillow. The pillow, he was sleeping on the pillow, and inside the pillow there were pieces of paper with poems. Then one day he was going by train with his pillow and all his poems inside, and a group of workers and Bolsheviks and revolutionaries blocked the train, and the revolution was starting, and there was fire on the barricades. So Velimir Chlebnikov got up in his train. He went down, he went out of the train, he approached the barricades, he took his pillow full of poems and threw his poems on the fire of the barricades. This is the most poetical act ever. This is the understanding of what poetry is. Poetry is an attempt to say something that you cannot understand. Is the attempt to do something that is beyond your strength and beyond your mind. This is poetry. The attempt to do something that is beyond your own language. Then all of a sudden, the fire of revolution is giving you the possibility of recognizing yourself and your words in that process. So Chlebnikov threw in the fire poems.
So interesting. Nanni Balestrini, we don't, in Turkey, in Turkish literature, we don't know much Nanni Balestrini, unfortunately.
Nanni Balestrini?
Yes.
Nanni Balestrini was a friend of mine. I met Nanni Balestrini when I was 19 years old. I was escaping the police in that period. I met Nanni, and Nanni invited me to go to his house in Rome, and I spent my period of hiding in the house of Nanni. Then he was a 35 years old, and I was 20 years old. So he was a sort of of teacher. He taught me what poetry can be. He was a very ironic person. He never said things are like this, things are like that. He always said everything is possible. And poetry is the ability to grasp what is beyond your sight, beyond the probability beyond the possibility which lies beyond the probability, the probable.
That's great. Maybe you want to read one of your poems, maybe, if you want. If you want.
Nalan, you asked me to read something.
Evet, something. Yes, yes.
Like you said, like Rilke. So can I begin with the poem of Rainer Maria Rilke and finish with a poem of mine? Have I the permission? I read something from the fifth elegy, Duini's elegy of Rilke, where he says, Angel, if there were a place we do not know, and there, on some ineffable carpet, lovers revealed what here they could never achieve, their high daring figures of heart's flight, their towers of desire, their ladders, long since standing where there was no ground, leaning, trembling on each other, and mastered them in front of the circle of watchers, the countless, soundless dead. Would these not fling their lust, ever saved, ever hidden, unknown to us, eternally valid coins of happiness in front of the finally truly smiling lovers on the silent carpet? Then I read something from Nalan, one of the texts that compose Nalan. Nalan is a musical opera by Marco Bertone with the voice of Bobby Gillespie and of Lydia Lunch. I wrote the texts and I will read one of the texts. The title is Earth and World. As the earth is revolting against the world, the history of the past has little to teach. We know nothing about the present, and what we know is scary. After painful convulsions from Santiago to Hong Kong to Barcelona, our body collapsed. Then silence everywhere. Perplexed pigeons stare at the urban desert from the steeples of the church. They cannot know that a civilization for no apparent reason may come to an end. But the video recorder encapsulated in the satellite is sending limpidity of colors that we have not seen in decades. Let's not go back to normal, as normalcy made us sick. Viral proliferation is the enigma we must understand. Let's forget the stupid crave for more. The crown of creation just needs breathing before happily flowing into nothingness.
Oh, that's great. Oh, thank you, Franco.
Thank you, Nalan.
There are lots of questions that I want to ask you, but I said that we have not very much time. So we can finish the meeting now if you want. And we will publish this, and I will tell you. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Hope to see you again.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you, and thanks to all the friends who will listen to our dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.